I'll try.
Why did I have to do that?
It doesn't, sometimes it doesn't automatically join the
How did you
audio.
know you have to join with audio?
It's something I've run across before.
Mark Cox, can you hear me?
They have it set up with more than one account. Yeah.
Peter Aurelio, I see you giving me a thumbs up, but I can't hear you.
Here's a vocal thumbs up then.
I still don't know what I did, what I needed to do.
So just when you share your screen, you can pop up that little bottom bar, the bottom green bar, and then on the far left it'll say join audio. If you're already joined, it'll say mute, but if you haven't, it'll say join audio.
Okay, thank you. I may have been rescued already, but nobody could hear me. Please stay for 30 seconds. Morgan Mason, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me very well with my mask on? I fear it's going to be a problem.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I ask you all remote students, that includes people in the room who are remote in a future class, to immediately speak up if you can't hear me clearly. Don't chat me, I might not notice it. I think I'm all right, but no, I'm not sure. I'm looking for the class pack. It's got a different icon right here. Right there. Nope, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to expand this one, that plus. Okay, welcome to the spreadsheets class. Apologies for being flustered. Thank you for Casey for coming to rescue me. Let's go over the syllabus real quick. The course is important, but I'm preaching to the choir, so I won't read that. The course uses the latest version of Office Excel 365, which has a number of new features. Several classes will be devoted to the new features of Excel. Named ranges, formal tables, pivot tables, data tables, subtotals, form controls, advanced filters, numerous advanced worksheet functions, conditional formatting, and several new dynamic array worksheet functions. We will use some applications of optimization modeling, also called linear programming, and simulation, primarily of financial and operations examples, a few marketing, HR examples as well. Even if you don't want to become an analyst yourself, you will benefit from this course because you'll be able to supervise people better. Everything will be recorded on Brightspace. You may swap days, just notify me. Mute your microphone on joining, keep your video on as much as possible. You may unmute and ask me a question at any time. You may talk to each other in the classroom at any time. I run this course like a lab. However, social distancing may make you not want to talk to each other. But if you can see from 6 feet away, you are welcome to ask your neighbor to clarify what I said. I run the course like a lab. Class pack, I encourage you to have additional copies of it, either printed or put it on your iPad or iPhone, so you can view the instructions in some classes, not every class. Read the instructions while working the problems on your laptop. 6 homework problems, 1 each week. Most of them have a choice of a bunch of finance problems or a bunch of operations problems. Final test, you may exempt with a PA in the course if you're doing all the homework problems. A traditional course has case reading and write-up. My course does not. Instead, I give you a little bit of reading assignment. I tend to lecture quickly, and I expect you to go over the material from class for an hour or two to fully learn it. Teams, study teams, pretty standard. Different sections are allowed. This may be unique to me, I don't know. Any team may fire any member if that member is not doing his or her share of the work. That's never happened. I've had this policy in effect for about 4 academic years, which means 16 modules. The vote must be unanimous by the firing member. The fired member will not be penalized grade-wise, but he will be in a team by himself for the rest of the module. Everybody got a prerequisite test from me, not a prerequisite, an Excel assessment test. If you don't know what I'm talking about, see me after class. I'm going to hold a review every Wednesday except today, starting at 2 o'clock. There is free help on the individual homework. That's a good time to get it. Often no one comes to those, so I'm going to end the meeting, the review meeting, when the last student leaves, or at 2:10 if no one has joined. In blue, before class, nothing for today. Friday, I will assign homework 1 on the second class. Friday, homework 1 is assigned. It's due on Wednesday of the following week when class starts. Before class 2, you should look at Intro Prod AB, the Excel workbook, sheet sum product, cells A1 to K10, show the solver, same workbook, sheet add in solver. Do those before class. I don't give quizzes. I don't enforce that, but you'll get a lot more out of the course if you'll do the readings ahead of time. I will lecture at a pace that assumes that you've looked at it according to the assigned material in the class pack. Class 3, before class, read my notes. Those are all in the files that I sent you, not in the class pack. Let's begin with workbook intro examples. Just trying to walk over there with my headset on. The cord reminded me not to do that. Alejandro Torres, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Alex Hay, Allison Taylor, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you as well.
Have I been speaking clearly? I fear not.
Yes, you have.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yes, Allison?
Do you think that it's better for us to watch you on Zoom or have the sheet kind of pulled up to the side and listen?
I will typically work the problem myself and then give you a few minutes, but not after every problem. My answer varies by student. I think you ought to try to work it.
Perfect. Thank you.
So you should be looking at my screen, of course. It would be ideal if you could have my screen and your screen. intro examples. Some trivial things. An XLSX file can never contain a macro. XLSM is allowed to have a macro. It doesn't necessarily have one. And this is 18 years old. Comments and notes, I'm not going to say much about them other than that a comment on Windows is called a note on Mac. I use the terms interchangeably. Microsoft is migrating what used to be called a comment is now called a note on Windows, but not on Mac. You may use comments or notes wherever I refer to, wherever I ask for documentation with a comment. You may use a comment or a note. We'll discuss them formally in a moment. Keyboard shortcuts. I want to talk about this a little bit. Every cell has a content and a display. So reviewing I am in book intro examples, sheet 3, content display key shortcuts. The display is ambiguous. Cell C3 contains 1562 and displays $1562. Cell G3 contains a formula which displays 2808 with a $sign and a comma. I want to teach you how to select a very large range. I'm going to spend about 15 minutes on keyboard shortcuts. Training the Streets comes to the Owen School. I don't know if they'll come this year in a Corona environment. Training the Streets spends 8 hours, 16 hours on keyboard shortcuts. I want to teach you a more efficient way of selecting this range. And now that we have 16,000, oops, I'm pretending like I'm drunk. I can't select the range. I want to show you a more efficient way. Now that we have over 1 million rows and more than 16,000 columns, this has become even more important. I want to teach you first on a small range, the concept, although it's not useful on a small range, it's useful on a large range. All righty. I want to select this range. 2 prerequisites. From B3, for example, press the Control key or Command key if you're a Mac, right arrow. It jumps to the end in the indicated direction. It jumps to the last non-empty cell on the right. Down arrow. It jumps to the last non-empty cell downward. Left arrow. It jumps to the last non-empty cell in the indicated direction. Jumps to the corner. Hold down the Control, press the arrow key. That's the first step. The second step is if you hold the Shift key and select cells with the arrow, it selects contiguously. Put 2 and 2 together with B3 active, B3, Control Shift, right down, and it's selected. That's not a big deal on a small range, but on a big range, it is a big deal. It can be time consuming if 50 times a day you have to select a range that has 10,000 columns and 50,000 rows. Once again, select B3, Control Shift or Command Shift, right down, and it's all selected. Let's select the green cell, M5, Control Shift, and I've selected the larger range. I'll change the zoom. Now, of course, you can't read those, but you can see that I've selected. Let me zoom a little bit differently. Control Home is a good shortcut, Control Home. Select the green key, Control Shift, right, down. Practice that for a minute, please, from the green cell, not from the cell above it.
Professor LeBlanc,
Yes,
you just mentioned control home in this sequence of teaching us this. What was that?
control arrow or command arrow.
Oh, okay.
Without the shift, it'll jump. With the shift, it'll jump and select. Now I need to notice an exception. If you're in a non-empty cell, control arrow jumps to the last non-empty cell in the indicated direction. If you're in an empty cell, control arrow jumps to the first non-empty cell in the indicated direction. There's always a confusion, always an exception. Activate M4. Control shift right and it stops. Why? Because the next cell is empty. It's supposed to stop at the last non-empty cell in the indicated direction. Hold down the control and right arrow again. It jumps over the empty cell and goes to the first non-empty cell. Not because it's yellow, it's not empty because it contains a blank space. Control shift right a third time. Let me repeat that. From the green cell, there's no problem. Control shift or command shift, right down and it's selected. From M mic 4, control shift and it stops prematurely. Don't move your left hand. Just press the right arrow again. Don't move your left hand still. Press the right arrow again, press the down arrow again. And finally it works. Practice that for a moment. Since the material is kind of dry to most people, not to me, I'm passionate about it. I try to lighten up the course a little bit with a joke now and then. I'll try not to offend anyone. I never appreciated the importance of spelling until I made a serious typo. I was out of town. I texted my wife, I'm having a great time. I wish you were her. Here. I wish you were here. Every cell has a content and a display. The difference is most obvious when the content is a formula. G3 has a formula as the content. The display is 2808. Unless you activate the cell, it's not clear whether the content is numeric or a formula that evaluates to that. Scrolling down to around A34, cell content versus display, examples. The control and the grave accent key, Windows or Mac. I want you to look at the key underneath the escape key. It's got a reverse, the key to the left of the 1, upper left of your keyboard. Hold down the control key, Mac or Windows, and press repeatedly the grave accent key. It toggles, look at column G. The screen jumps, so it's hard to follow. Column G, that's a normal display. Column G, that's a display of the content. Toggle it back and forth. How many of you in this room succeeded in doing that? This is the perfect time to yell out to your neighbor. That's allowed.
In my Excel, it doesn't change anything doing that.
Let's go maybe to chat. Let me come back to Zoom. Let's do a poll. Go to participants, all of you, including those in the room. You know the term roomers versus zoomers? You're roomers, R-O-O-M-E-R-S. Everybody else who's not here is zoomers. Do you succeed in toggling the display between the normal display and the display of the content? Vote yes or no. I have 6 yeses, 7 yeses, and 1 no. 11, that changed. 10 yeses and 1 no. Feel free to chat if you're having trouble. Now look, we've got 36 participants. You're not participating remotely, are you? So I guess you can't vote. That's right. There's an audio feedback problem if you go on. My voice will play on your computer and then play again, and there'll be an echo. Of the 36, only 10 have voted. The other 26 are watching TV or at the bar drinking. Let me clear the answers and ask you to answer another question. Do you want me to put you in break rooms when you are remote? I thought you would like that, but I read my evaluations last end of mod 2, and some of the comments were it's not really necessary to put us in break rooms. That's personal preference. Let me see a show of hands for those of you in the room. Do you think it's important to for me to put you in break rooms when you're remote? And here, 4 of the 36 have voted no. 1 of the 36 has voted yes. Now I have 1 yes and 7 no's. Raise your hand if you want me to put you in break rooms periodically when you are remote. Raise your hand if you don't want me to put you in break rooms when you're remote. And if you didn't vote either way, I guess you don't have a strong preference. It looks like most people don't like the break rooms. Okay, I will not put you in break rooms unless you change your mind and contact me otherwise to the contrary. Intro examples. We already did this. Let me give you 3 minutes to review whatever you like. 323.5. And then I will continue. I'll give you 3 minutes by yourself. Rachel Watts, do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Christian Krafasi?
I do.
Charlie Wagner, you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, doke. Morgan Mason, do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Larry LeBlanc, do you hear me? Oh, that's me. You can't see that I'm laughing. That's one of the worst things. let's put A56 near the top left of your screen. 1,385 scores are supposed to be shown for departments A, B, C, D, and E. Don't look at the column letters. Look at the labels in row 60. Are any scores missing? In Department A, any scores missing? No, there are none. From from E61, control down arrow takes me to the very bottom. Right arrow to column F, that's F1445. Control without the shift up arrow, and it stops prematurely. There is one missing score from Department B. From Department C, nothing's missing. Anything else missing? Department D as in Delta, anything missing? Correct, nothing. Department E, anything missing? Yes, one score. From D74, control down arrow, what's the next non-empty cell beneath D1445? There's nothing there. There's no reason to scroll down sheet after sheet, screen after screen. Look what I'm doing. Can you see the left-hand column? I'm scrolling up a page at a time. From E105, control down arrow. I want to know if there's anything beneath row 1445 in column D. Control or command down arrow. Nothing is there. I've become a real workaholic. Whenever anybody mentions work, I get drunk. You're supposed to laugh. Mouse shortcuts, I'm not going to cover, nor are they testable. I mention them in case you want to get an advanced head start on reading them. I'll spend 30 seconds. Activate C12, hover to the right of the cell and get the four-headed cursor, double click, and it'll jump to the right. I double click the right border and it jumps to the far right. Don't go with this cursor, that's the select cursor. Not this cursor, the thin cross, that's the fill. This cursor, the four-headed, it jumps to the right. It jumps to the top. It jumps to the left. I mentioned that in passing in case you want to question me about it at a later time. Not testable. For that matter, keyboard shortcuts are not testable directly. The final exam will be timed. You might save some precious minutes if you know the keyboard shortcuts compared to your classmate who has to go like this, like this, like this, looking and looking and looking and looking and looking. All right. Comments, borders, named ranges, abbreviated, and if. A cell comment or note we cannot tell whether the content of B3 is the number 1 or a formula which evaluates to 1. We see the display is 1 for B3. Only by activating it can we answer the question. If you're looking at a printout or a PDF, you cannot tell. F3 is marked by a comment. It's called a note in my version of Excel in my office, but not on this podium. Don't worry about the difference between a comment or note. One is threaded. The first person who posts a note posts a question typically. Team members, I'm certain of rows 1 through 50, but please check row 51. And then someone can respond to that note. Al said, yeah, row 51 looks good. Joe said, I'm not sure. I assume, I don't know if I can confirm Al, etc. A threaded conversation. Let's insert a comment in F4. Right click, insert comment. Don't insert. If you choose that incorrect choice, it'll ask you, how do you want to shift? Left, right, down, or up or down, left, right, up or down. Cancel, right click, insert comment. And then I could retype the formula. It's safer, especially with some of the complex formulas we'll get to copy and paste the formula. Now you cannot copy like this. Do you see the moving marquee? I place that on the clipboard. I cannot copy it like that. I have to activate the cell, go to the formula bar, activate the entire content, Control C for copy or Command C. And now it's really a good idea to press the escape key or the X, or else you might mess up the formula. Let me make an intentional mistake. You see the formula is equal sum of B4 to E4? Not anymore. I just messed up the formula. Whenever you activate the formula bar, depending on where the cursor is, you may or may not need to hit the escape key or the X. Personally, I don't feel like thinking about whether I need to hit the escape key. It's quicker to just hit the escape key every time. Activate the formula bar, Control C, and without even thinking, I hit the X. And then paste from the clipboard into the cell comment. That's my strong opinion. You may think otherwise, that's fine. If you want to retype that, that's okay. But it's good to get in the habit of pasting, because when the formulas get longer, you might mess them up. Cell comments, I want you to study that on your own. Borders and patterns, I won't cover this in class, too elementary, although I will cover it in a moment when we do an in-class problem. Named ranges. Maybe I have some data in an odd range, like column ZX12 colon ZZ 9,834. And I can't remember that, and I don't feel like typing it. So I name that range my data. How many of you in the room, by a show of hands, already know about named ranges? They come in different varieties: workbook scope, worksheet scope. I have half a hand. Let me clear. And I ask the Zoomers to vote. Are you knowledgeable? Are you thoroughly knowledgeable about named ranges, including the difference between workbook and worksheet scope, and how to insert them and how to delete them? I don't see any votes. One is familiar with them. Maybe you're not sure if you're familiar with them. Maybe you know a little bit about them and you don't know if you know all about them or not. 1 and 5. I understand that you don't want to vote if you're not sure of the answer, but there's 36 of you. I'll give you 10 seconds. Once again, vote yes if you're already knowledgeable about named ranges. No if you're not thoroughly knowledgeable. 70% have voted no so far, so let's go on. All right, let's take a quick look and see if there are any named ranges. Look at the name box, which shows the active cell. Drop down the arrow, and there are 3 named ranges. I'm not really interested in the print area. I would never use that named range in a formula. Technically, it's a named range, but I'm not interested in it. Demands, that's those cells I just turned yellow. That's the named range. It's entirely equivalent to D16:E17. The other named range is interest. It's the single cell D19. In the case of a single cell named range, D19, slowly double click the cell with the left button and look at the named box. Interest, D19, interest, D19. If you double click it too fast, you go into edit mode. I'll press escape. For teaching, I use a tiny example. If the range in fact is D as in delta 16 to E17, maybe you don't want to name it. But if it's an enormous range, XET 15 colon XF8 78,258, then maybe that's a pain in the neck to remember and type. So maybe you want to name it. Most people like named ranges, although it is controversial. Not everybody likes them. I'm going to require that you use them in this course occasionally because in your job, your boss may like them and he or she may request that you create them. All right, using them in G16 equals average of demands. What the heck is that? That's the average of those numbers. In G17 equals the sum of demands, 8 plus 2 plus 4 plus 3. Watch as I change this yellow cell to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What did I do wrong? Nothing. The column is just too narrow to show it. So the sum is 1, 2, 3, 5, 9. The average is 3089.75. Let me undo that. Don't you wish you could undo some of your life decisions as easily as clicking a button? Let's insert a new named range. I'm going to turn these cells yellow for your attention. K2 through L4. Let's name that range my data. Select the cells, go to the name box. The name has to be a single word, not starting with a number or punctuation. Let me give you an invalid name, and you'll see the symptom. First of all, that's a typo, but the blank space is not valid. Look what happens. You must enter a valid reference or type a valid name for the selection. And it doesn't even allow you to edit what you typed. My data, one word, is a legitimate named range. When you select the cells, the name box echoes the name of the range. If you're not sure what the name of the range is, go to the name box, select my data, and change something. Those red cells are named my data. Now you can type equals AV and typo equals AV and tab or double click on the worksheet function you want, then type MY, and the only possible completion, the only legitimate completion is my data. I use reverse capitalization. I have caps locks on. Let me tab and average of my data. You realize that means if you give it a very, very lengthy name, like my data, assuming that Biden is not reelected in 2022, and we do have a good economy. A named range that long, you can do it because you don't have to spell it out. Let me do that again. Equals AV, down arrow tab. I do not have to, oh, I see I have an unintended error. God damn Jesus Christ. I don't have to spell the name of the, suppose it was my data 785, assuming Donald Trump gets convicted in his impeachment. I just need to type the MY and the rest of it will be filled in for me, tab, and there we are. So you can give it a lengthy name and not worrying about having to type it. There's a general rule: if your entire formula consists of a single worksheet function, you do not have to type the closed parentheses. It's needed, but Excel will supply it without even asking you. I'll just press enter. And Excel supplied the parentheses without asking. That's true if the entire formula is a single worksheet function. If you choose to use named ranges, I require that you conspicuously define them. If you hand in something that says, that has a cell with a formula equals the sum of my data 1 plus the average of my data 2 minus the average of my data 3, it's tedious for me to check it, for the recipient to check it. So I require that you explain demands, D16 to E17, interest, D19, if you create named ranges. The name manager, formulas tab, name manager, will give you all the named ranges, including the print area, which we're not interested in, and it'll define them. You can edit. Notice the scope of the named ranges. The scope can either be workbook or specific to a particular sheet. My data that I just created is workbook in scope. That means in any sheet in this book, you can refer to my data and it knows exactly what sheet you're talking about, exactly what range you're talking about. We will not in this course use worksheet specific named ranges. An example of them is the print area. Of course, the print area in one sheet can refer to different cells from the print area in another sheet. That is also true of general named ranges, but we won't do that in this course. It's very rare in practice. If there's another way to create a named range, select the cell, go to the define name, and I'm going to call it delete later. Bad capitalization. I'm not worried about that. Scope workbook, you can choose a different scope, but that's not testable because worksheet scoped named ranges is not testable. If you create named ranges using the shortcut, select the cells and type the name right here, it always defaults to workbook in scope. That's the only application we'll see in this course. All right, let me give you 3 or 4 minutes. No, we're running a little slow. Let me give you a couple of minutes to review that. I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. I still drink, I just use a different name. Everything I tell about jokes, everything I say intended to get you to laugh is not true. When I say I texted my wife, none of that is even remotely true. Here's a joke with a title, Husband in Trouble. A woman is shopping for a new dress. She texts a selfie to her husband and asks if she looks fat in this dress. He texts back emphatically, no, but that's not a word. Moo is a word. Spell checker changed it without his realizing it, and he texted back moo. So he's in trouble. That's not true, but it's funny anyway, right? Let's go to the if worksheet function. The if worksheet function or statement evaluates a logical test. A logical test is something that can be true or false. If the test is true, it returns one value, and if false, it returns a different value. Equals if, logical test, in this example, J48 greater than or equal to absolute G49. The value, if true, is bonus. The value, if false, is no bonus. Imagine a much longer list of reps, hundreds, thousands of sales reps. The threshold for getting a bonus is 95,000. I sold 91, Erica sold 53, Amanda sold 97, Tom sold 98. The single formula in K48 copies down. The logical test equals if J48. When you're in K48, the active cell is K48. When you're in K48, you look at J48, the number to your left. If it's bigger than or equal to absolute G, absolute 49, bonus, otherwise no bonus. And that copies down. Other examples of the if worksheet function are this doctor has a quota of 8 patients. We're not supposed to assign more than 8. In M68, I have an if worksheet function equals if K68 is less than or equal to L68. The value, if true, is quote, quote, which displays empty. The value, if false, is a bunch of exclamation points in quotes. So it marks the problems. The doctor is not supposed to be assigned more than his or her quota. Here's a problem. Scrolling down quickly. Here's a problem. This doctor was assigned 10. Here's another problem. Here's a fourth problem. The if worksheet function to detect problems equals if logical test. K68, that's the patient seen, is small enough. The value of true is blank, quote, quote, double quote, open double quote, close double quote, comma, a bunch of exclamation points, I don't care how many, to mark the unusual ones. Here's another example. Equals if N73 is 1. The value, if true, is the sum of the numbers. The value, if false, is the average of the numbers. Equals if logical test, value if true, value if false. The values can be text, can be numeric, or can be other worksheet functions. Take 2 minutes, chat with your colleagues if you like. No, you're not a, well, Zoomers, chat with your colleagues if you like. Roomers, chat, talk if you like. I'll give you 2 minutes. God. Let me address some of the chat. Where is the poll? Well, I'll hold. Too much noise. Let's go on. I want the value, I want to do an if statement to test whether these deliveries are on time. On time means within 2 days of the promised date, referring to an expensive item like a yacht or a Porsche. I'm not referring to dinner. Was dinner served on time? We promised delivery on January 20th, and we actually delivered it before the promised date. That's considered on time. Equals if E68 is smaller than or equal to D68. No, E68 is smaller than or equal to D68 plus 2. D68 plus 2. Oh, I better read this more carefully. Equals if the actual delivery date was on or before, E68, the actual delivery date was on or before the promised delivery date plus 2. You're allowed a 2-day grace period. The example is somebody's going to buy a $100,000 Porsche or a $200,000 boat. He will probably wait 2 days rather than accept a Porsche that he doesn't like the color of. He doesn't like the radio. He doesn't like the upholstery. That's the presumed. I can change the threshold. I can change the gray cell in I-65 to a 1 or to a 0. Yes, this is on time. 116 is on or before January 22nd. 126 is not on or before January 25th. I'm doing the arithmetic in my head. I'm reading the date and adding 2 to it and then speaking it. Promised on the 28th, which is the 30th, delivered on the 28th. Okay. Promised on the 4th, so we're allowed up to the 6th of February? No, that's not. Let's work a few in-class problems. Put A74 near the top left of your screen. 1, format the data cells to have gray shading with blue borders. I didn't show you how to do that. I'll do it, but that's too elementary for this course. 2, insert a cell comment in E78 or a note containing the cell's formula. 3, insert the following named range. I-84 is return during normal economic times. I don't know what the economy is going to be. But I would expect return to be 10% in this example. Name the range. Use if functions. I'll give you a minute and a half. I'll start working them. I'll insert the named range first. I'll activate I-84 and type the name of the range in the name box. RET underscore normal, enter. Oh, I made a mistake. Undo. I didn't fully activate the name box. I think I'll make that mistake intentionally in the next section. It's a common mistake. Once again, activate the cell and make sure you activate the name box. I don't want to type return normal right here. I want to type it right here in the name box. Now deselect the cell, select it, and there's the name. Deselect it, select it, there's the name. Or if you prefer, go to the name box and select the new named range. There it is. Insert a comment in E78 containing the cell's formula. Right-click, insert comment. Activate the cell, formula bar, select everything, Control-C, escape in case I need to. Activate the cell comment, Control-V. Let me do that again in case you didn't understand something. Activate the cell, activate the formula bar, Control-C. Now, depending on where the cursor is, if I forget to press escape, I'm going to mess the formula up. Watch, this is an intentional error. Depending on where the cell is. I really needed to activate it, Control-C. Now, I don't feel like thinking about whether I need to press escape again. I do this dozens of times a day. I'd rather just press escape. It never hurts to press escape. Then go to the comment and paste it. The third part, the last part, equals if C77 is greater than or equal to the named range, comma, yes, comma, no. Here's an intentional error. Tell me what I did wrong. Say it louder. Yes, I need quotes. I can barely hear you, but I heard the word quotes. The symptoms are name. It's thinking yes is a named range, and there is no such named range. It's thinking no is also a named range. There is none. When you use text values, you put them in quotes. That's not true with numbers, not true with formulas. Drag it to the right. Yes, no, yes. And I really should do the coloring one. Gray shading with blue borders. Select the cell, Home tab, Paint bucket, gray, border icon, more borders, thick, blue, any shade, outline. Okay. There are the solutions to the 4 problems. Hard coding is the next sheet. Hard coding audit skim. I have in column C for investment A, 132 cells. Notice I have some hidden rows. 7, 8, 9, 10, they're there, they're just hidden. I have the net present value at interest rate B4. B4 is 0.5%, the monthly interest rate. In C139 equals NPV at interest rate B4, the numbers C7 to C138. I have a subtle, I won't call it an error, a dangerous practice in D139. The formula is numerically correct, but I have hard coded a number directly in a formula. That's considered unprofessional and error prone. In 6 months, you might forget that way down in row 139 is an interest rate. You change B4 to 0.6% and everything updates except for D139. Don't hard code. Put numbers in a separate cell. There are some exceptions. You can hard code 7 days in a week. That's never going to change. 24 hours in a day. That's never going to change. 60 minutes in an hour. 60 minutes in an hour. You can hard code 365 as the number of days in an average year if you want. There's a certain amount of personal preference, but certainly interest rates, although the corporation mandates that we use that interest rate until further notice, it could change. So that should not be buried in a formula. Let me activate B172 in case you're interested. This is not testable. Trace precedence. B172 is the summation of all the pink cells. Each pink cell is the square of the yellow cell to the right. Each yellow cell is 10 larger than the number to the right. Tracing precedence. The immediate predecessors of B172 are only the pink cells. But let me press the icon again and again and again until it beeps. Just keep pressing it until it beeps. The predecessors of B172 are the pink cells. The predecessors of the pink cells are the yellow cells. The predecessors of the yellow cells are the gray cells. In red, not testable. You don't even have to read them. Let's go to shell item stockage and sorting 1 and make sure that shell item stockage and sorting 2 is also open. I'm not going to cover elementary sorting. I would like you to study the leftmost red sheet. You may bring it up during the review this coming Wednesday, or you may Zoom me or call me at your leisure. I'll cover one of them. Sort 2 skim. it's considered appropriate for you not to select the range that you want to sort, but rather let Excel select it. For this reason, at certain zooms, let me let you look at the full records. There is a drug field, a brand field, a pills per day field, a daily dose, and a cost field. At certain zooms, you might not be able to see all of the fields. You might accidentally select only these fields, thinking you've selected them all. It's rare, maybe you disagree, but you might forget to select a field. Zoomers, can you see me? You might have name, address, city, state, and zip code at the end. You might shuffle the order of the name, address, city, and state and leave in the unchanged order the zip code. You can ruin it. If you make that mistake, you will ruin it. The only thing you can do is undo if you notice it in time, or close and not save if you notice it in time. Otherwise, it has to be retyped. So it's a good idea to let Excel guess the range rather than you specifying that I want you to sort this range. You might leave off a column or two at the far right. Excel can only do that if it's in standard form, a single row of field titles, and every subsequent row is a record. An empty column to the left, unless you're in column A, an empty column to the right, unless you're in column XIV, empty at the bottom. So this record that's not colored is not going to be considered. When you go to sort, it'll take, you select one cell, not two cells. If you select more than one cell and say data sort, it thinks that's the entire range, but it will ask you. So I'll allow you to expand it. But if you select one, it doesn't even ask you. It thinks you cannot possibly want to sort that one cell. You go to sort and it selects it for you because it's in standard form. Stockage shell. Let's activate. The book is shell item stockage and sorting 1. The sheet is stockage shell. First of all, I want to copy or move this sheet to another book that's open. I could, but I won't do this. I'll select what I think is everything and copy it. Then I'll have problems with font differences and column widths. It's better to move or copy the sheet. I have an image of it right here. Right-click the sheet, move or copy. Decide whether you want to create a copy of it or literally move it. And then select the other book from this drop-down arrow. New book, intro examples, no. Shell item stockage and sorting 1, no, that's the current book. I want shell item stockage and sorting 2. And it'll ask you to put it before or after the only sheet. There's only one sheet, so it doesn't really matter in this case. And now we're in the different book, shell item stockage and sorting 2. This is what I just did. Move or copy. Select the new, read that later. A brick and mortar retailer is exploring e-commerce opportunities. To do so, it needs a new warehouse for 225 candidate items. The footnote says that would really be 225,000 or much larger than that. But for teaching, I give you a moderate example. Each item is either going to be stocked or not stocked, and we can't stock them all. We don't have enough space in the warehouse. We don't have enough money to stock every item, so we want to stock the most profitable ones, the ones with the greatest contribution to profit and overhead. First of all, I notice there's an error. Let me copy some of these numbers. 6,000 650. Let me copy them over here. 6,650. That is supposed to be 66.5. That is supposed to be 74.5. That is supposed to be 95.9. I want to scale by 100. Type the scaling factor in any empty cell. I put it in X1, but it doesn't matter. Select the cells to be scaled. Once again, I want to divide 6650 by 100. I want to divide all of these in column E. I want to select the range to be sorted bottom to the top without the shift control down arrow. So I go to the last non-empty cell in column E. Shift control up arrow, and now I've selected it bottom to top so I can read the label. Practice that. Let me do it again. I want to select the relevant data bottom to top. I don't want to do this because now I can't read the directions. I don't know what to do next. So I'll cancel out of that. Go control down arrow just to get to the bottom, then select the last cell, control shift or command shift, up arrow, and now I've got the selection and I can read the directions here. All right, I lost my clipboard. Control C. Moving marquee tells you the 100 is on the clipboard. Select column E, bottom to top, control down arrow, control shift up arrow. Right click, do not paste, paste special. Values. Nope, that's not what I want. Operation, divide. I could multiply all those numbers by the 100. I could add 100 to all of those. I could subtract 100 from all of those. I could divide 100 by all of them. I could divide all of them by 100, and that's the one I want. If I change my mind, I say none. But I want operation divide. Okay. And over here, let me zoom up for emphasis. I've previously had 6,650. And now I have 66.5. Maybe I should have put the temporary copies of the numbers in the same row. What did I just do? The volumes in E were entered as volumes per set of 100, but should be volumes per unit. We must divide E5 to E229 by 100. To do this, enter 100 in any empty cell, really. Copy the scaling factor, the 100. Select the range to be scaled. Paste special operation divide. See the image at the bottom right. Oops. Let me give you 2 minutes to review that. I'm going kind of fast. I expect you to put in an hour or so after each class doing these things. let's go ahead and sort this. Remember the big picture. We don't have enough space or money to stock everything. So let's sort them by the ones with the biggest contribution. The English language is lacking a word. Profit is a noun, profitable is an adjective. Contribution is a noun. There is no corresponding adjective. Contributable, no, that's not a word. I want to sort by column F with the largest on top. It's in standard form, so I don't need to select the range. Select any cell. Data tab, any cell between in the range B4 through G200 or whatever. Sort and answer the question. Does my data have headers? Yes. You see where I'm pointing? Does my data have headers? Sort by contribution, and I would prefer largest to smallest. Let me cancel that and do it again, just in case I went too fast. Select any cell in the range B4 to G7. Data tab, sort. Does my data have headers? Yes. Sort by contribution. Largest to smallest I want. Sort by contribution, not by the font color. We won't talk about that in this course. We do a little of that in the data visualization course. By cell values, the only thing we'll consider in this course, largest to smallest. And double check, please, that you have these items selected. I'll shade them violet. Violet is my favorite color. Can you guess why? She's 9 years old. My granddaughter. 67 for sure, because it's got real big contribution. 219, 20, and 5 for sure. And generally pick from the top of the list until we've got too many. The takeaway was how to sort, how to move the sheet, how to scale a range. How do you move a sheet? You right-click the sheet tab and select move a copy. Answer the question. Do you want to create a copy or actually move it? And you can select a different book, or you can move it within the book or copy it within the book before these sheets. So move or copy the sheet, scale the range, put the scaling factor like 222, 222, Control C, select the range to be scaled, right click, paste special. I'm not really going to do this, but this is how I would do it. Operation, you can add 2222 to all of them, or you can subtract, multiply, divide. That's much faster than the alternative. One more thing. If I select only 67 furniture, then my cumulative volume is 78.9. Do you agree? And my cumulative cost is 663. Look at the numbers that I just gave, ridiculously large font. My cumulative is 78.9. Look at how I accumulate totals. I use the formula, the sum from E5 to E5. The first time you see that, you may think I'm crazy. Why not just say equals E5 instead of the sum of E5 colon E5? Let's look at more carefully. That's the sum from absolute E5 colon relative E5. When it's copied down, it changes to the sum of E5 to E6, the sum of the first two. Copied further down, the sum of E5 to E7. The single formula, I shaded it violet. Sometimes these colors are not the same as these colors. Believe it or not, I know my colors. I've had recent practice with my great-grandson who's 10 months old now. The single formula, which copies down, although it's awkward to read, it's not awkward here, the sum of E5 to E9, the sum of E5 to E11, but that formula looks awkward. However, I prefer it to the alternative of two separate formulas. Look at those two gold cells. One of them is equal D5. The other one is a separate formula equals the number above plus the number to the left. That's kind of error prone. You'll notice my columns, E, F, G, H, I, S. I wanted to emphasize something. Let me unhide the hidden columns. If you don't know how to hide and unhide, you should come to my review Wednesday, a week from today at 2 o'clock. The point is, these formulas may be off the screen, and you might absent-mindedly select this violet row and copy it down. If you do, that's a mistake. I'm pretending there's something here. This formula in I5 can be copied down. This formula in S5 cannot be copied down. And if it's off the screen, you might forget and copy it down. If I copy that down, I messed it all up. And I'm not talking about the borders. Those numbers are wrong. I needed to copy down the gold one, not the pink one. Now I can copy down and I can fill without formatting. Let me give you 2 minutes to review that. A quick review. Miscellaneous, we talked about the types of file extensions. XLSX can never have a macro. Macros are dangerous. They can send an email to your boss saying you can take this job and shove it. I don't want to work here anymore. Or it can reformat your hard drive. Comments and notes, they are ambiguous. I will use the terms interchangeably. Comment or note. When I do this on my computer, it prompts me to insert a note. Here it prompts me to insert a comment. Either one is fine. Keyboard shortcuts, the content and the display, the control left and right arrows. I would like you to practice. I went too fast. Mouse shortcuts, I intended to skip that one. That's why I made it red. But there is such a thing as mouse keyboard shortcut. Even with a good mouse, it's kind of hard to be precise. Comments, borders, named ranges. We talked about named ranges, how to insert them, how to use them. Let's delete a named range. You have to go to the name manager in Windows, select the ones you don't want, like my data, and press the delete key. That's serious, so it'll ask me to confirm. Close. On a Mac, which is supposed to be real user-friendly and intuitive, it's actually harder. You have to look for the minus key. If you want to delete a named range, you have to go to insert a named range. On a Mac, you go to define a new named range, and it'll give you a list of all the existing named ranges, because you can't have two named ranges with the same name. And find the one you want and press the minus key, which will delete it. don't hard code is the only takeaway there. Let me close that. Don't save it. Sorting. This is shell stockage and sorting 2. We saw how to move sheets, how to scale, and how to do a basic sort. Close that. Don't save it. We did not get to sorting by colors. I didn't intend to. It's red. I didn't get to this. You should. Yes, I did get to that. You should look at the leftmost sheet and know how to basic sort. Okay, I have a 3-page handout from the class pack, which I decided not to get to because I thought it was too full. None of this is testable. There will be no questions on what's the definition of a model. You might read it, but everything that's worth points in this exam, in this course for the exam of the homework, will not be discussion. It'll be do this in Excel and what's the number? Or it might be a multiple choice. What's the correct formula that you would use in this context? The first 2 I didn't really cover, but this is a review. Cell comments or notes, borders and shading, named ranges, the content versus the display. Move to the end, the control and arrow keys. I didn't cover that. Sorting and accumulating totals, the 2 alternative ways. Okay, that's all. I hope you stay in the class. I'm looking forward to teaching you some really advanced Excel. Have a good day. Any questions from me?